Welcome to the Communications Podcast. In this show, communications expert Janet Shahaki explores digital, virtual, physical, and cyber communications topics while showcasing other leaders in the field of business, communications, and technology. Here's your host, Janet Shahaki.
Hey, welcome back to another podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. So if you know, I did a quick series on the 3 S's required for growth. Now, this is from Janet's Foxhole. This is from my view of the world. And thank you for those who have shared that this series has been encouragement to you. I have to do the last S today, and that is story. The first S was strategy. The second S was structure. And the third S is story. What's your story? You know, I actually was planning to do this podcast about 3 weeks ago, this particular one on story. And I kept going and deleting them. It just wasn't it. I'm like, I know I have this information. It's in my head, but it's just not feeling right. Yet today I come home from church and I'm like, it's the time to do it. Not because I heard this preached about this morning, just because I knew that God had put all the pieces together and for this part, and now it's time. And I don't read off a script. If I sound unscripted, it's the case. I am unscripted. I have 1 or 2 bullet points and then I put all the other packaging around it. So when you think about story, we think about 3 key components. Number 1, who? Who are we? Maybe you're the business owner. Maybe you're the vice president of marketing. Maybe you're a director or a manager. Maybe you're the 1099 consultant that works from their home. Maybe you're an individual who works for somebody. You got to think, who are we? Who is our organization? Who is our department? Who is our company? Who am I as an individual? So the first thing we have to answer is, who are we? The second thing I think we have to answer is, how do we do what we do? How do we do it? Now, the market that I work in, which is primarily the military markets and the defense markets, that's what we do here at Jansen. We do strategic communications and we specialize on those markets. And so we are in a market that really gets weighed down with acronyms and a lot of heavy technical information. It's like, oh, we got it. The more we see, that we think the better we've made it. And I think the opposite is true. I think if we can make it memorable and make it simple, we've made it more powerful. But I think we live in a world whereby if we simplify it too much, people don't think it's good. Well, I will share an example. Not long ago, I purchased that Amazon Mesh system or whatever it's called. It's the device you get to connect to your router and it kind of spreads out your internet band throughout your dwelling place. So I was over at Best Buy and getting it, and I'm thinking, guys, listen, I think I need to send Geek Squad out to set this up. They're like, no, you'll be fine. I'm like, I'm not sure you understand. I'm not an IT person. They're like, trust me, these guys weren't lying. I jumped for joy. I could put this thing together. I'm like, oh my gosh. You download the app, you do this, you do that. Step 1 this, step 2 that. They walked me through the how to do it. Now, I guarantee you, making that mesh system took a lot of science, took a lot of technology, took some engineering, but they simplified their how. And I've been like a big brand ambassador since because I thought this thing was great. And one of the reasons I thought it was great because it was so easy to know how to use it. So number 1, who are you? Number 2, how do you do what you do? And number 3, why does it matter? Why should we hire you? Why should we, if you're looking for a job, if you're bidding on a contract, why should the government hire you or whoever the purchasing entity is? What are you bringing to the mission? Why? What's your so what, as sometimes we call it? We have to answer the why. I'll never forget years and years and years ago, we were working with a great company and I was the lead on the account. And these guys had really cracked the nut on some technology and solutions for the military that were specifically designed for when soldiers and warfighters are what they call in theater. And in theater can be like Afghanistan or Iraq or the Pacific, wherever kind of the fight is going on, so to speak. And these guys have done an amazing job of developing solutions that worked in those environments for the warfighters. They had a great story. They could easily talk about here's who we are, here's how we do it, and here's why it matters. Well, they started doing very well. And they decided, hey, we want to branch out. We want to go after the NASA market. So they called me up for a meeting and they said, hey, we want to talk to you. We think we want to break into NASA. I'm like, whoa, hold on there, cowboy. What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, no, there's some big contracts coming out and we can provide great people. I'm like, everybody can provide great people. And no, you don't understand. We can do this, we can do that. And they were really struggling to find their story. So I just simply said, hey, can you just put your briefing up on the wall, up on a PowerPoint here, and just walk me through and pretend I'm your potential customer at NASA and tell me how you're going to take your story and train, which is mainly a military story, and benchmark it over here to NASA. They couldn't do it. Because everything they could passionately talk about related to the soldier. Everything they could talk about related to the in-field solutions. I'm like, if you can't figure out your story, you're not going to be able to sell it. They didn't go into the NASA market, needless to say. Not because I told them not to. It's because they could see that their story can't get them there. You know, one of the things here at Janssen is we don't do work for just anybody and everybody. We specialize in the military markets and we specialize in defense, working with defense companies. We're not going to claim to know healthcare. We're not going to claim to know retail or leisure or tourism. God bless those industries right now. I really hope they come back. We don't even go after like work at the Department of Justice or the Department of Interior or Department of Transportation. We stick to the market that we know. We study that market. We learn about that market. We understand who the players are. We understand who the programs are. So I think many times, the reason clients select us is because we really understand their world. Well, I don't think it can be all things to all people. Some brands can. Janssen cannot. But you have to know, who am I, how do we do it, and why it matters. Those are kind of the three pillars for story. Now I'm going to close with 2 quick points. This relates to you whether you represent a business or whether you represent yourself. Number 1, don't be ashamed of your story. Sometimes we don't like to talk about those tough seasons in our life. Sometimes we don't like to talk about those bad seasons or those bad moments. We all have them. I've had them many times, but my most notable one was not long after 9/11 when I almost lost the business and lost everything. And I wrote a book about it, Facing Chapter 11. I did too. And it took me years and years and years and years to get to the point where I could write the story, because one of the things was I needed to not be ashamed of the story. God used that time in my life to shape me and refine me and to humble me and to teach me a lot of things. So sometimes failure can be our greatest teacher. Don't be ashamed of your story. I just reviewed a resume from an individual who had this great communications career. Then all of a sudden there's a line item in it that says, I took a pause from my career to take care of my ailing parent. And it was for like 5 years. And I just wrote an email to the hiring manager. I said, interview this person. You know, the first thing I thought about, they're not ashamed of their story. I really admire that. Let's not be ashamed of our story. And number 2, real quick, let's not be arrogant about our story. I think one of the worst things we can do is, oh yeah, I don't do that anymore. Oh yeah, I have people who can take care of that. Oh yeah, things were different back then, but oh yeah, now we're doing 50 million. We're doing 500 million. We're doing 4 billion in business. We're doing this, we're doing that. Well, wait a minute. That can come off as a little arrogant, can come off as a lot of bragging. I don't think we're to be arrogant about our brand. I don't think we're to be arrogant about our story. Sometimes we better be careful about not getting our skis too far out in front, because I'll tell you something, you'll fall when you do. For those of you who are skiers, you can appreciate. I love to ski. I used to ski tons when I was in my 20s and 30s, and then I had back surgery, and I just went skiing like 8-9 weeks ago, and I hadn't skied in like 12 years. I'm like, it's back. I loved it. So I won't bore you with that story anymore, but you know what? We got to be careful not to be arrogant about our story. You know, sometimes when we start to get arrogant, God will bring us back down and remind us where we came from. So number 1, don't be ashamed about your story. Number 2, don't be arrogant about your story. Who are you? How do you do it? And why does it matter? Get to that so what. So thank you for listening in today. Come follow us again soon. I'm going to be doing some other podcasts here shortly. Enjoy your day, and thank you for your time. God bless.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Communications Podcast. This show is sponsored by Janssen, which specializes in digital, virtual, physical, and cyber communications. Learn more about Janssen by visiting www.janssencom.com.